Hi everyone, I am Shobha Rani, Faculty in Biology from the Temple of Excellence, Vidyashram PU College. Dear students, as you all know, the first unit of your second PU Biology syllabus called Reproduction has a weightage of 25 marks. And this unit 1 of your second PU Bio syllabus called Reproduction has 4 chapters. Today in my session, I'll be discussing about the chapter 1 called Reproduction in Organisms. So the chapter name that I'm going to deal with in today's discussion is Reproduction in Organisms. And this chapter called Reproduction in Organisms has a weightage of 5 marks. You may wonder, for 5 marks we have to study so much. But one thing you have to bear in mind, this is the chapter which is going to help you out to score more marks in the other chapters, because the basic concepts you are going to study in this chapter called Reproduction in Organism. And as I said, this chapter has a weightage of 5 marks. 2 marks, 1 question, and 3 marks, 1 question. Now, moving on to this very important topic or a chapter called Reproduction in Organisms. Right, you can see in this beautiful picture, what are you going to see? You are going to see many animals and a boy and a girl sitting. So this is the planet Earth. What I mean to say here is, what is biology? I think right from your school days you have studied about biology. What is biology then? Biology is nothing but the story of life on Earth. So what is biology? Biology is nothing but the story of life on Earth. And we as individuals live for some time and die without fail. But species continue to live through millions of years until and unless they are threatened by natural or anthropogenic extinction. What do you mean by natural? I think all of us know natural calamities like the floods, tsunami, etc. are the reason for the extinction of animals. And anthropogenic, what do you mean by anthropogenic? Man-made activities. I think all of us know man is so very greedy. To fulfill his wants or needs, he has started hunting animals and killing animals. So, until and unless threatened by natural or anthropogenic extinction, we find the animals or the species to continue to live through millions of years. Now, what is the significance of reproduction? Why it is so very important? Reproduction becomes a vital process. What do you mean by vital? A very important process without which species cannot survive for long. So reproduction is a very important process for the continuity of species generation after generation. And this very important process called reproduction enables progeny. What do you mean by progeny? The offsprings or the young ones, either through asexual mode or through sexual mode, which I am going to discuss in the later part of this session as to what is asexual reproduction and what is sexual reproduction and how it differs from each other. This sexual mode of reproduction enables creation of new variants. So when we say which is more advantageous, whether it is asexual or sexual, definitely I would say that the sexual mode of reproduction is more advantageous because it is leading to the creation of new variants, new varieties, so that the survival advantages are enhanced. What do you mean by survival advantages? The offspring that are born through asexual reproduction do not have a better survival advantage when compared to the offspring that are born through sexual mode of reproduction. The offspring that are born through sexual mode of reproduction will have a better survival advantage. Now, Each and every organism can live only for a certain period of time. Do you think we are immortal? No. So each and every organism can live only for a certain period of time. So what do you call that period of time? From birth to natural death of an organism, the period from birth to its natural death represents, or it is called lifespan. It is called lifespan. What is lifespan, children, then? This is a question which is commonly asked in your examination. What is lifespan? It is asked for 1 mark question. The period from birth to the natural death of an organism is called lifespan. And do you all think the lifespan is same in all the organisms? Definitely not. It varies from an organism to organism. And not only that, the lifespan is not necessarily correlated with the size and shape of an organism. I mean to say, the lifespan is in no way correlated with the size and shape of an organism. Now let me justify this statement of mine with a very good example. I think all of you might have seen a beautiful green bird with a red beak, that's parrot, and a black bird called crow. What do you observe in these two birds? Both are birds, but only difference is the color is different, right? But they are of the same size. But when it comes to the lifespan, you will be wondered. The lifespan of parrot is 140 years and that of a crow is 15 years. Is it not tremendous difference in the lifespan, children? The lifespan of parrot is 140 years and that of a crow is 15 years. Definitely there's a lot of difference in the lifespan of a parrot and a crow. Let me give you one more example. Let us take an example of a mango tree and that of a peepal tree. Who has not seen a mango tree which bears such beautiful fruits called mangoes, which is called the king of fruits? And I think all of you might have seen the peepal tree. Many people worship this peepal tree. What is so special about these two trees? Definitely there is some speciality. What is the speciality then? The lifespan of mango is 200 years and that of a peepal tree is 2500 years. I am definitely surprised. Are you not? The mango and the peepal tree, when you look at both the trees, both are of the same size, both bear green leaves, but mango tree bears fruits, peepal tree doesn't bear fruits, but still there's a lot of difference in the lifespan. The lifespan of mango is 200 years and that of a peepal tree is 2500 years. Whatever may be the lifespan, one thing you have to remember, whoever is born on this earth has to die one day. That means to say, death is a certain process. Death is certainty, right? And no individual is immortal except for single-celled organisms. So whoever is born has to die one day, right? Now coming across a very important mode of reproduction which I am going to discuss in the later part of this session called sexual mode of reproduction. What is the advantage? As I already said, sexual mode of reproduction enables what? Creation of new variants, new offsprings having different variations, differences, so that the survival rate of these organisms is more when compared to the offsprings that are born through asexual reproduction, right? Now, let us take the examples of some animals, right? I think we have come across so many animals on the planet Earth, and this elephant has a lifespan of how much? 50 years. Right? And when you look at it into another fruit fly, and this fruit fly is called Cinderella of genetics. You know what is the lifespan? It is just 40 to 50 days. Not years, it is just 40 to 50 days. And that of a butterfly is 1 to 3 weeks. And that of a banyan tree is 200 years. You just look at tortoise. See the lifespan. It is from 100 to 150 years, cow 18 to 22 years, crocodile 60 years, rose 10 years. So whatever may be the lifespan, one thing you should remember, what is that which ensures continuity of species? My answer to this question is reproduction. So what is that which ensures continuity of the species from generation after generation? It is reproduction that we take for granted. So reproduction is the only process for the continuity of the species generation after generation. Now let me come back to the definition of reproduction. As I said, this is a very important it is a vital process. Now, how do we define this word called reproduction then? In simple terms, if I want to define, reproduction is a process which produces new offsprings or new young ones. Let me emphasize more on this definition. Children, one thing you should remember in biology, definitions are very important. You have to write the correct definitions. You can't write half right and half wrong. So such vague answers will not carry marks. So definitions should be written correctly. So try to understand the definitions properly. So how do you define the word called reproduction then? Reproduction is a biological process. Why do we use the word called biological? Because it is a process which is happening only in living organisms, not in non-living entities. So reproduction is a biological process in which an organism gives rise to young ones. What do you call the young ones otherwise as? Offsprings, similar to itself, similar to its own kind. So I think you might have heard about like begets like, life begets life. A donkey can give rise to a donkey only, a horse can give rise to a horse only. That is what we mean by similar to itself. Now, what will happen to these offsprings that are produced? The offsprings further grow, mature, and in turn produce new offspring and die. What I mean to say here is, I just want to stress upon a very important cycle that is happening in the life of an organism. What is the cycle otherwise called? So the cycle, there is a cycle of birth, growth and death. So any organism will come across three very important cycles. What are the three important cycles? One is birth, growth and death. As I said, reproduction enables the continuity of the species generation after generation. So the varieties of organisms or the animals and the plants what we are seeing today right now, it is because of this very important process called reproduction, which enables the continuity of the species generation after generation. Right? Now, do you think the process of reproduction is so very simple process? Definitely not. I would say it is not. Then what are the reasons for the process to be more successful? I say that the organism's habitat. What do you mean by habitat? Place of living. The place of dwelling or living is equally important for the organism to carry on the process of reproduction. And its internal physiology, definitely. So when we come across animals, the reproductive organs should have developed properly to carry on the process of reproduction. If not, it will not carry on the process. And several other factors which are collectively responsible for how it reproduces. So once again, I mean to say that the organism's habitat, its internal physiology and several other factors are collectively responsible for how it reproduces. Now, reproduction, just now we learnt about the definition of reproduction. Now let us move on to the next aspect of this chapter, the types of reproduction. So reproduction is broadly classified into two types. What are the two types? The first one is called asexual reproduction and the second one is called sexual reproduction. Later part of this session I am going to discuss in detail, but right now let us study what is the difference between asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. What is the basis for classifying reproduction into two types? I would say the very important basis for classifying reproduction into asexual and sexual reproduction is based on the participation of the organism. What do you mean by participation of the organism? Whether one parent or one organism is participating in the process of reproduction, or two parents or two organisms are participating in the process of reproduction, we classify the reproduction into two types: asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. Let me get back. Just now as I said, based on the number of participants. Asexual reproduction is a kind of reproduction where the participation of only one parent is taking place, whereas in sexual reproduction there is a participation of two parents. Here we call it as uniparental, here we call it as biparental. You can see the beautiful diagram here. Asexual reproduction, right here, this is the sexual reproduction. Moving on to asexual reproduction. Definition of asexual. First, let us understand the definition of asexual reproduction. How do we define this asexual? I said in the beginning itself, it's a kind of reproduction where there is involvement of only one parent. A single parent produces the offspring, right? Now, what is the correct definition? As I said, definition should be correctly defined. Right. Now, what is it? Asexual reproduction is a kind of reproduction where the offspring is produced by a single parent, uniparental, with or without the involvement of the gametes. So, with or without the involvement of the gametes is the correct definition of asexual reproduction. Now, let me get back to this diagram. This is an yeast cell, a fungi. Here you can see a bud. And this is a bud, and actually what is a bud? Budding is one mode of asexual reproduction, right? Now what is bud? This is called as a bud. Bud is an outgrowth. What is an outgrowth? At this particular point of the parent body, there is repeated cell division taking place, and this repeated cell division will lead to the formation of an outgrowth. This outgrowth you call it as bud. So what is a bud? It is an outgrowth. How is it formed? Repeated cell division take place here. So this repeated cell division will lead to formation of a outgrowth. What do you call that outgrowth as? Bud. And this bud will remain attached to the parent body till it is completely developed and matured. What do you mean by completely developed and matured? Until and unless it is capable of leading an independent life. Just like a small child, before it learns walking, it holds the hands of its mother. But once it starts learning to walk, it will just leave away the hands of its mother and starts walking. In the same manner, once the bud is completely developed, it detaches from the parent cell and leads an independent life. Right. So this is a type of asexual reproduction. Here you can see a chain of buds like this. Each bud is capable of leading an independent life. So now let me get back to the definition of asexual reproduction. So what is asexual reproduction? It is a kind of reproduction where offspring is produced by a single parent, uniparental, with or without the involvement of gametes. So we use a word called agametes. We use the word called agametes. We use the word called agametes. Right? No involvement of gametes. Now, what are the features of this asexual reproduction? This asexual reproduction has its own characteristic features. Now let us see what are the characteristic features of this asexual reproduction one by one. As we have already discussed, asexual reproduction is a kind of reproduction where the offsprings are produced from one parent. So we use the word called uniparental. And one thing we should remember, there is no complicated processes like pollination and fertilization, which is very much required. Pollination is nothing but transfer of the pollen grains from the anther of a flower to the stigma of a flower, which is very much important for the process of sexual reproduction in flowering plants. And the gametes have to fuse. to carry on a very important process called fertilization. What is fertilization? Fusion of the male gamete with the female gamete, resulting in the formation of a zygote. All that complicated process is avoided in asexual reproduction because it involves only one parent. So it is uniparental. Next very important point to be noted, there is no gametes, means where will the question of union of gametes comes? As I said beginning that it is agamous. Gametes are not involved in the process of reproduction. Obviously there is no union of gamete. There is no male gamete and female gamete. Then where will the question of the fusion? Union means what? Fusion of the male gamete with the female gamete will take place. So there is no union of gametes. Hence it is called agamous. Moving on to the third very important feature. All the cell divisions are mitotic. I think you have studied in first PUC. There are two types of cell division, mitosis and meiosis. Let me not go in detail about these two types of cell division. What I mean to say here is, in asexual reproduction, the only type of reproduction that is in with the cell division that is involved is mitosis. Mitosis is what? It's an equational cell division. Meiosis happens in gamete cells or sex cells. Mitosis happens in the body cells or somatic cells, right? But here you can see the only type of cell division that is happening is mitosis. It's a very important point to be noted, very important feature to be noted for asexual reproduction. Another very important feature of asexual reproduction, the offsprings that are born there are produced are morphologically. What do you mean by morphologically? External appearance. Almost all the offsprings are of the similar type. They look alike. That is what we mean by morphological. Genetically, what do you mean by genetically? The genetic constitution of the offspring is one and the same. So similar or identical. So what do you mean by that? The offsprings are morphologically and genetically similar or identical. Right. Moving on to the fifth point. What is the fifth feature then? Offsprings are identical to one another. All the offsprings are almost similar and they are also exact copies of their parents. So they are like Xerox copy of their parents. Hence we use a word called clones. This is a question which is commonly asked for 1 mark question. What is a clone? What is a clone? It is an exact copy of their parents. Or offsprings are identical to one another and also exact copies of their parents and are called as clone. So now let me once again recollect what are the important features of asexual reproduction. What was the first very important feature? Produced from only one parent. So it is called uniparental. Whereas in sexual reproduction it is biparental. And what is the second feature? What is the second feature? There is no union of gametes. That is called agamous. But in sexual reproduction it is very unique that there is union or fusion of gametes. And here all the cell divisions are mitotic. There in sexual reproduction it is meiotic. Here it is mitotic. Here the offsprings, the fourth very important feature, offsprings are morphologically and genetically similar. There they are dissimilar. And here the fifth very important feature, offsprings are identical to one another and also exact copies of their parents. Hence we use a specific word called clone, which you don't find in sexual reproduction. These are the very important features of asexual reproduction. Now coming back to the examples. In which type of organisms you come across this type of asexual reproduction? Do you come across in higher organisms? No. This type of reproduction is commonly seen in organisms which have relatively simple organization. What do you mean by simple organization? Like the unicellular animals and algae, then fungi and some invertebrate animals. Like you don't come across such type of reproduction in multicellular organisms which have a better body organization, right? So these are the very important features of asexual reproduction. Getting back to the different methods of asexual reproduction. So far we have understood what is asexual reproduction, what are the features of sexual reproduction. Getting back to the methods. So what is the method that are adopted in asexual reproduction? Let me come back one by one. First one is called cell division. Second one is called budding. Third one is called binary fission. Fourth one is called encystation. Fifth is called sporulation. And sixth is called zoospore formation. Seventh is called conidia formation. Eighth is called fragmentation. And ninth is called gemmules. Right? Now let us see one by one. Binary fission. The very word itself will tell you. What is binary 2? What do you mean by fission? Division. So whatever contents are found in the cell, may it be the nucleus or the cytoplasm, divides. Fission means what? Division. And it is distributed to the two parent cells. And such type of binary fission is commonly seen in organisms like amoeba and paramecium. Right? Now moving on to the next very important method of asexual reproduction called budding. As I have already briefed up about budding when we were talking about yeast cell. Right? As I said, what is a bud? Bud is an outgrowth. Where does it grow? At one particular region of the parent body it grows. How does it grow? Repeated mitotic cell division will take place only in that particular region, not elsewhere. Only in that particular region. Active rate of mitotic cell division happens, which results in the formation of a outgrowth, and outgrowth is called as a bud. And this bud will remain attached to the parent body till what time? Till it is completely matured. What do you mean by maturity? Until and unless it is capable of leading an independent life without the help of its parent. Till then it is remain attached to the parent body. Once it is matured, it is just going to detach itself from the parent body and lead an independent life. So that is called as a new individual. Like you come across that in Hydra and yeast. Right? Now let me give a very important concept of budding. Budding is of two types. One is called exogenous bud. The other one is called endogenous bud. So buds are of two types. What are the two types? Exogenous bud and endogenous bud. The very word itself will give you the meaning. What do you mean by exo? Outside. Exit means what? Outside. Endo means what? Inside. When the bud is formed outside the body of the parent, it is called exogenous. When the bud is formed inside the body of the parent, it is called endogenous. A classical example for exogenous bud is Hydra. And that for a endogenous bud is sponge. Right? So what is bud? Bud, as I said already, it's an outgrowth, and buds are of two types. What are the two types of buds? Exogenous bud and endogenous bud. What is exogenous bud? The bud that is produced outside the body of the parent cell. Whereas endogenous bud is a bud which is produced inside the body of the parent. And as I said, for this you can give an example of gemmule. What is a gemmule? Simple words, you can call it as internal bud, special internal bud, which contains very specialized cells called archaeocytes. You know, all this methodology is adapted by the organisms to overcome the unfavorable climatic conditions. See, everybody wants to survive, whether the conditions are favorable or unfavorable. But what is the method that is going to be adapted by those organisms when the climatic conditions are not favorable? So one such is formation of internal buds. So on the return of the favorable climatic conditions, the cells are going to be released and it is going to carry on the process of asexual reproduction. Hope you have understood what is binary fission, what is budding, and what is gemmule. Moving on to the next method of asexual reproduction is called encystation. This was the question which was asked in March 2020 paper, children. What is encystation? Under unfavorable climatic condition, the amoeba withdraws its pseudopodia and secretes a three-walled layer. And this three-walled layer is called as what? Cyst wall. And you can see the number of daughter nuclei. And they are nothing but called as what? Pseudopodiospores. Right? And on the return of the favorable climatic condition, the cyst wall is going to dissolve and they are going to reproduce. And many such young amoeba are produced. So such a type or such a method of asexual reproduction is called encystation. Let me define the word called encystation once again. So when the animal will adapt this encystation under unfavorable climatic conditions. What do you mean by unfavorable climatic conditions? The climatic conditions are not favoring the animal to carry on the process of reproduction. I told you in the beginning itself, reproduction is not a simple process. There are many factors which will help the animal to carry on this process. So one such is favorable climatic conditions. So under unfavorable climatic conditions, the amoeba withdraws its pseudopodia and secretes what? A three-walled layer. And what do you call that three-walled layer as? A cyst wall. And it is otherwise called also as a capsule. Right? And on the return of the favorable climatic conditions, the cyst wall is going to dissolve and then it is going to carry on the process of asexual reproduction. This process of formation of a cyst wall is called as encystation. Right? Now, moving on to the next type of method of asexual reproduction called sporulation. The very word itself will tell you, when you split the word spores, right? So during the unfavorable climatic conditions, on the return of the favorable climatic conditions, what will happen to the cyst wall? It will burst out and releasing what? Many small amoebae. And these many small amoebae are called as what? They are called as pseudopodiospores. They are liberated into the surrounding medium and each liberated spore is going to later develop into an adult, and this method is called as what? Sporulation. So this is also one type of one method of asexual reproduction that is adapted. Right? Now moving on to, as I said, we use the word called asexual reproduction in animals, but when it comes to plants, we don't call it as asexual. We use vegetative propagation is also a type of asexual reproduction, but we use the word called vegetative propagation. So what is vegetative propagation? It is a type of asexual reproduction in plants. Then why do we use this word called vegetative and propagation? What do you mean by vegetative? The plant parts are called as vegetative parts. May it be the root, may it be the stem or the leaf. So all these parts put together, they are called as propagules. Hence the word propagation, multiplication. So these propagules are going to take part in the process of reproduction, hence the name vegetative propagation. So what do you call the units of vegetative propagation as? Propagules. And these propagules are what? They are capable of giving rise to new offsprings. Let me get back. What is vegetative propagation? It is a type of asexual reproduction in plants. What do you call the units of the vegetative propagation as? Propagules. And these propagules are going to give rise to what? New offsprings. Right? Now, let us come back to the units of propagation. What are the different units of vegetative propagation? Let us study one by one. First one is called runner, and the second one is called sucker, and the third one is called rhizome, and the fourth one is called tuber, and the fifth one is called offset, and the sixth one is called bulbil, and the seventh one is called the leaf buds. All these are the units of vegetative propagation, or you can also use the word called vegetative structures. What do you mean by vegetative structures? The structures are the parts which take part in the process of vegetative reproduction is called as vegetative structures. For example, like a runner. What is a runner? It's a narrow green branch which develops from the base of the erect shoots which grows horizontally. Hence the name what? Runner. Right? And they bear what? Scaly leaves on their nodes. They develop upright shoots at intervals and helps in vegetative reproduction. What is a classical example for a runner? This particular part what I am going to explain is very important from examination point of view, children, right? So try to remember what all I am going to explain in this particular part. For example, they'll ask you they'll ask you runner, then you have to write about oxalis. So what is the vegetative structure for oxalis? It is runner. For sucker, what is the example? Chrysanthemum. For rhizome, what is the example? Ginger or turmeric. For tuber, potato. Eyes on the potato. Like for example, if you have not used the potato for a longer time at home, you can see the sprouts. And that sprout is nothing but called as an eye. And eye is again a vegetative structure which takes part in the process of asexual reproduction. And the classical example for an eye is potato. Next, offset. Definitely I need to emphasize on this particular plant called water hyacinth. All of us know this water hyacinth was brought because of its beautiful leaves. But now it has become an alien species. It is so very difficult for us to get eradicated from it. Why? Because of this vegetative structure called offset. It multiplies so very fast that it covers the full surface of the water body and depletes the water from the oxygen, thereby killing the aquatic animals. Not only that, when it decays, the whole water is going to prove toxic, and when the domestic animals come and consume such water, toxicated water, they will die. So this is a very important point to be noted. So this is asked, and the scientific name of water hyacinth is a common name, and the scientific name is Eichhornia. Right. Next, bulbil is agave. Then leaf bud is bryophyllum. I think if you happen to come across this bryophyllum, which is a xerophytic plant, grows in conditions where there is scarcity of water. It is a succulent leaf which is having full of water. But another uniqueness of this bryophyllum leaf is, so it will have buds like this. These are called leaf buds. These are called leaf buds. So when this leaf buds fall off from the leaf, they are going to develop into a new leaf. That means to say these are the asexual reproductive structures, right? So moving across, another very important concept called sexual reproduction. So far we have come across asexual reproduction. What is the definition of asexual reproduction? What are the features of asexual reproduction? What are the different methods of asexual reproduction? Right. Now we'll move on to a very important aspect of reproduction called sexual reproduction. As I said, definition is very important. How did we define asexual reproduction? We defined asexual reproduction as a kind of reproduction where the offsprings are produced by a single parent, uniparental. But this is a kind of reproduction where two parents, there it was uniparental, here it is biparental, of opposite sex, participate in the process and involves the formation and fusion of the gametes, right? So there is formation of gametes and fusion of the gametes, resulting in the formation of zygote. And zygote is what? It is nothing but a single diploid cell, and the offspring that are born are non-identical. They are non-identical to the parents. There they were identical to the parents, where we use the word called clone. They were exact Xerox copy of their parents, right? Now here you can see, in this picture you can see what is sexual reproduction. As I said, it is the fusion of the gametes. Two parents are involved. One is the female parent, the other one is the male parent. And the female parent produces a gamete, female gamete called egg or ova. And the male parent produces a male gamete called sperm. And a very important event happens, as I said, that is not going to happen in asexual reproduction, but here it is going to happen. That is called fertilization. So what is fertilization? Fusion of the egg with the sperm, resulting in what? Very important, zygote. Zygote is what? It is a single but diploid cell. What do you mean by diploid? 2n. The chromosomal number, the nucleus of a cell will have 2n. It will not have n. Only the gametes will have n number, but the zygote will have 2n number, right? And this zygote, which is a single cell, will become a multicellular embryo. How will it become a multicellular embryo? Repeated mitotic cell division will take place and ultimately it becomes a multicellular embryo. One thing we should remember, all of us have come to this world as single cell. Later on we have become multicellular. So we all have started our life with a single cell. We should never forget. We all have started our life with a single cell. Then we have become what? Multicellular. Right? Now let us see what are the features of sexual reproduction. There also we dealt with the features of asexual reproduction. Now let me deal with the features of sexual reproduction. There only one parent was involved. Here it is two parents. Here you can see two parents are involved. Hence the name biparental. What is the first very important feature? It is biparental. Two parents of opposite sex. One is female, the other one is male. Not of the same sex. Of opposite sex are involved. Hence the name biparental. There it was uniparental, here it is biparental. Next very important feature, offsprings are generally dissimilar to parents. There they were similar to parents, here they are dissimilar to parents. Where is it seen? In which organisms you come across this mode of reproduction? Both in lower and higher. Most of the time in the higher organisms, right? Next, here there it was happening only in those organisms which have a simple body organization. Here it happens in those organisms which have a complex body. What do you mean by complex body organization? As you know, in multicellular organism there are millions of cells. Millions of cells put together form a tissue. A group of tissue form an organ, group of organs form an organ system, and group of organ system put together forms an organism. So here you come across in higher organism. And what is the type of division that is going to happen here? It is meiotic. There it was only mitotic, here it is meiosis. So the gamete cell, what is meiosis? 2n is reduced to n. Why it is reduced? Again, it's a big story. As you know, the chromosomal number needs to be maintained for a particular species. If it is 46, here if it is 2n, it is reduced to, egg is reduced to n. Here it is reduced to n. After the fusion, what happens? 2n. Here if it was 2n and here if it was 2n, it would have become 4n. That means we are not normal people, we are abnormal people, right? So always the chromosomal number should be constant, and for maintaining that constant chromosomal number, meiosis is a very, very important type of cell division you have to remember. Next very important feature, fifth one, involves the formation and fusion of sex cells. As we saw in the picture here, sex cells. Egg is one sex cell, male sex cell, and egg is a female sex cell and sperm is a male sex cell. So here involves the formation and fusion of sex cell or gametes. Then the rate of reproduction is slower and complex. There it was very, very fast, rapid rate of multiplication in case of asexual reproduction, and it is a simple type of reproduction. Here it is slower and also very, very complex. It is not so very easy to come across the formation of a zygote. It involves a very serious series of events, right? And as I said, the sexual reproduction will lead to variation and variation will lead to evolution. Change is part and parcel of every organism on this planet Earth. So the changes, the gradual changes that is happening is due to variation, and that is made possible by sexual reproduction, not by asexual reproduction. Moving on to this, a very important aspect, any sexually reproducing organism will come across 3 phases of lifespan. Can you see this beautiful picture here? You can see a small baby growing, becoming an adult, then attaining sexual maturity. And this picture, what do you observe here? This is an old person. What I mean to say here is, so there are 3 phases of, you can say 3 phases of lifespan in organism. One is called the juvenile phase. Actually, we use the word called juvenile phase in animals, whereas we use the word called vegetative phase in plants. Should remember, juvenile stage, we use the word called juvenile stage for animals and the vegetative phase for plants. Let me come back as to what are these 2 terms, right? Now, moving on to the second phase. What is the second phase? Reproductive phase. And third phase is called senescent phase. So the first, what you are going to see here is the first phase. Then this is the second phase. And this is the third phase. Right? Now let us study one by one. What is the difference between these 3 phases of sexually reproducing organisms? Coming back for the first one, juvenile. You know, young ones or small ones are called as juveniles. What is this juvenile phase? It is the period of growth. From the time of growth of an organism from birth till it attains maturity, right? From the time of birth till it attains sexual maturity is called juvenile phase. From the time of birth till it attains sexual maturity is called as what? Juvenile phase. Then what is this vegetative phase? It is the period from the time of seed germination. What do you mean by seed germination? As soon as we sow the seed, it germinates, it sprouts. What is sprouting? Sprouting is nothing but formation of a small plant called sapling. So seed has 2 very important parts, as you all know. The radicle and the plumule. Radicle develops into root system and the plumule develops into shoot system, and that is called germination. From the time of seed germination to flowering. What is flowering? In sexually reproducing flowering plants, flowering is a very important reproductive phase. Flowering is the beginning of the reproductive phase. As you know, a flower is a very important reproductive part of a plant body which bears androecium and gynoecium. Androecium is a male reproductive part and gynoecium is a female reproductive part. Moving on to the next phase, reproductive phase. One thing you should remember, whether it is juvenile phase or the vegetative phase, the reproductive phase is common for both the juvenile phase and the vegetative phase. What is reproductive phase then? It is the period of growth of an organism, from the time of growth of an organism till it attains maturity. Sexual maturity is attained. Do you think throughout the life the organism is reproductively active? No. Only during certain period of time in its lifetime it is active. And what do you call that? Reproductively active phase as the reproductive phase, and is capable of producing gametes, and these gametes will take part in the process of sexual reproduction. Fusion is going to take place and zygote is going to form, later embryo is going to be formed. So this phase is called as the reproductive phase. Coming back to the last phase is called as senescent phase. I think you can see this picture. What do you observe when you see this picture? It's a dry tree where all the leaves have fallen down and no leaves are found on the tree. So this indicates what? Old age. I think all of us know, as we grow old, do we look the same like how we were in the young stage? No. As we grow old, what happens? The metabolic activities will start slowing down. So once the metabolic activities start slowing down and ultimately it stops functioning. So when all the metabolic activity stops, what do you call that as? Death. That is the end of the organism. So hence we use the word called old age. It's the last phase of the lifespan of an organism. In sexually reproducing organism, the last phase is called as senescent phase. So in this, the remaining part of this chapter will be dealt in the next session, and what all we have covered in this particular chapter is what is reproduction and the definition of reproduction, what is lifespan, what is the significance of lifespan, and how the lifespan varies from an organism to organism, how it is not correlated to the size and shape of an organism, and what are the types of reproduction, that is asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. What are the features of asexual reproduction? What are the features of sexual reproduction? And what are the methods of asexual reproduction? We have come across all those things in this particular session, and particularly in the last part of this session where we have dealt with sexual reproduction, we have come across that any sexually reproducing organism is going to come across three phases, that is the juvenile phase or the vegetative phase, and the reproductive phase and the senescent phase. So the remaining part of this chapter will be dealt here in the coming sessions. So thank you.